The alien ship hovered silently above Earth's atmosphere. Inside, senior xenobiologist Zakrat's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he reviewed the mission parameters once more. His silver skin reflected the soft blue lights of the command center. We have selected 12 observation sites across the North American continent, Zakrat said to the research team. Our mission is to understand this planet's predator-prey relationships before we make first contact with the humans. The 5 other aliens in the room nodded their elongated heads. They had studied Earth from afar for decades, but this was their first close-range mission. Each alien stood about 7 feet tall with slender limbs and enlarged craniums that housed their advanced brains. Team 2 will focus on the region humans call Montana, Zakrat continued, touching a glowing map with his 6-fingered hand. It contains wilderness areas with minimal human presence and several apex predator species, including the animals known as grizzly bears. Scientist Moralty stepped forward. The bears particularly interest us. They display complex behaviors and intelligence that exceed most non-human species on this planet. Yes, agreed Zakrat, and their interactions with humans show surprising variations, sometimes violent, sometimes peaceful. We must understand why. The ship descended under the cover of night. Using their cloaking technology, the aliens deployed 3 small research stations in remote areas of Montana's mountains. These stations, invisible to human eyes and instruments, would serve as their observation posts for the next 6 months. At the main station, Zakrat and 4 other researchers settled in. Their technology allowed them to monitor wildlife movements within a 50-mile radius. They placed tiny, undetectable drones throughout the forest to record close-up observations. Look at this data, said Narration, the team's behavior specialist, on their 3rd day. The large predators all maintain specific territories, but the humans move through all territories without apparent concern. Zakrat moved to the screen. Yes, and notice how the other animals react to human presence. They retreat but rarely attack, even predators capable of killing humans. It contradicts basic survival patterns, said Moralty. In our studies of 12,000 other planets, apex predators almost always challenge intruders in their territory. The team spent the next 2 weeks mapping animal movements and behaviors. They watched wolves hunting in packs, mountain lions stalking deer, and bears fishing in streams. But the humans fascinated them most. Humans are destroying parts of this planet, observed Laroon, the environmental specialist. They cut trees, build structures, and pollute waters. Yet in these preserved areas, some humans seem to protect rather than destroy. Zakrat nodded. This contradiction is what the Council finds most puzzling. Humans appear capable of both terrible destruction and unexpected compassion toward other species. On the 23rd day, their sensors detected a large female grizzly bear with a small cub entering their observation zone. The mother bear moved carefully through the forest, teaching her cub to dig for roots and find berries. Record everything, ordered Zakrat. Bear-cub relationships might help us understand human parental behaviors as well. The next morning, their sensors also detected a human entering the same region. The man wore green clothes and carried equipment on his back. He moved quietly and seemed to be checking small devices attached to trees. It's a forest guardian, said Narration, consulting their database. They call them rangers. This one has been in our observation zone several times. Zakrat watched the human with growing interest. Track both the bears and this human. I want to see if their paths cross and what happens if they do. The team didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of Earth's complex ecosystem forever and alter their plans for humanity's future. Jack Murphy woke before sunrise in his small cabin. The morning air was cold as he made his coffee and packed his gear. At 35, Jack had spent the last 7 years as a park ranger in Montana's wilderness. He preferred the company of trees and animals to people. Before becoming a ranger, Jack had worked as a wildlife biologist at a university, but after his wife Ellie died in a car accident, the academic world felt empty. He left that life behind and found peace in the mountains. Another day in paradise, Jack said to himself. as he stepped outside. His breath made small clouds in the cold air. His cabin sat at the edge of a vast forest that stretched for miles into the mountains. Jack checked his map and planned his route for the day. He needed to check 15 wildlife cameras spread across his patrol area. These cameras took pictures when animals moved in front of them, helping scientists study wildlife patterns. He loaded his gear into his truck: binoculars, radio, first aid kit, bear spray, extra batteries for the cameras, and lunch. After a 20-minute drive on dirt roads, Jack parked and continued on foot. The forest was quiet except for bird songs and the sound of wind in the trees. Jack knew these woods better than anyone. He could identify every plant, tree, and animal. Track. "Hey there," Jack said softly as a deer watched him from between trees. The deer's ears twitched before it bounded away. Jack smiled. These small moments made him feel connected to something bigger than himself. After hiking for 2 hours, Jack reached the first camera. He opened it carefully and changed the memory card. The camera had been working perfectly for months, but when he checked the photos on his small viewing device, he noticed something strange. "What the heck is that?" he muttered. In one night photo, there was a blur of light that shouldn't be there. It wasn't an animal's eyes reflecting the flash, and it wasn't a person with a flashlight. The blur seemed to float above the ground. Jack had seen similar strange lights on other cameras over the past few months. At first, he thought it was just equipment problems, but now he wasn't so sure. Still, he had no explanation, so he made a note in his logbook and moved on. Unknown to Jack, alien researcher Narration was observing him from just 50 feet away. The alien's cloaking device made him invisible to human eyes. Narration recorded everything. Jack did, fascinated by how carefully the human moved through the forest. Subject appears to maintain the recording devices and shows respect for the surrounding ecosystem, Narration reported back to the research station. He speaks to animals despite knowing they cannot respond. Interesting behavior. By midday, Jack had checked 7 cameras. He sat on a fallen log to eat his sandwich and drink water from his bottle. As he rested, he noticed fresh bear tracks in the mud nearby. "Looks like autumn has been through here," he said aloud. The rangers had named the female grizzly bear Autumn because of her unusually reddish-brown fur. Jack had observed her from a safe distance many times over the years. Jack finished his lunch and continued his patrol. At the next camera, he found claw marks on the tree trunk. Autumn had been scratching her back against it. The camera had captured several good photos of her, and Jack was pleased to see she had a cub with her now. "Good for you, old girl," he said to the bear's image on the screen. "Hope your little one is doing well." As Jack hiked deeper into the woods, checking more cameras, he remained unaware that he was being studied just as carefully as he was studying the wildlife. The aliens continued recording his every move, increasingly intrigued by this human who seemed so different from others they had observed. Autumn. The grizzly bear moved through the forest with her cub following close behind. Her powerful body pushed through thick bushes while her small cub struggled to keep up. The cub was only 4 months old and still had much to learn about surviving in the wild. The alien researchers watched the bears through their hidden cameras. At the main observation post, Zekrat and Moralty studied the bear's behavior with great interest. "The mother bear is extremely protective," said Moralty. "She constantly checks for danger and keeps the cub within sight at all times." Zekrat nodded. "Earth's maternal protective instincts are similar to those on many planets we have studied. But these bears show remarkable intelligence beyond basic survival skills." On the viewing screen, they watched as Autumn taught her cub how to dig for roots. She demonstrated first, then watched as the cub tried to copy her actions. When the cub made a mistake, Autumn gently corrected it with her paw. "Look at this teaching behavior," Zekrat said excitedly. "She is not just protecting her young, she is passing on knowledge." The aliens followed the bear's movements for several days. They observed how Autumn showed her cub where to find the best berry bushes, how to catch fish in shallow streams, and how to scratch against trees to mark their territory. "What is most interesting," said Narration, joining the other 2 aliens, "is how the mother reacts to human presence. The screen shifted to show footage from the previous week. Autumn and her cub were eating berries when the bear suddenly raised her head, sniffing the air. She immediately pushed her cub toward a thick group of trees and stood protectively in front. Moments later, 2 human hikers passed by on a trail about 50 yards away. They never saw the bears, but Autumn watched them carefully until they disappeared. She avoids humans when possible, Enreal explained. But notice how her reaction differs depending on which human she encounters. The screen changed again, now showing Autumn's reaction when she detected Jack Murphy nearby. The bear still moved her cub to safety, but she didn't show the same level of alarm. She watched Jack from a distance but continued to forage for food, rather than leaving the area completely. This is the 7th time we've recorded her encountering this specific human, said Zekrat. She seems to recognize him as less threatening than other humans. Laroon joined the discussion. Perhaps because he moves differently through the forest. He is quieter and shows awareness of his surroundings that other humans lack. Meanwhile, Autumn led her cub to a small stream. The cold mountain water rushed over rocks, and small fish darted in the current. The mother bear stood in the shallow water, watching intently. When a fish swam past, her paw shot out with surprising speed, flipping the fish onto the bank. The cub watched with great interest. After seeing his mother catch 3 fish, the little bear stepped into the water to try. His first attempts failed, completely. The fish were too quick and the cub's movements too clumsy. Autumn seemed patient, letting her cub practice. After many tries, the cub managed to touch a fish but couldn't catch it. Still, Autumn nudged her cub gently as if encouraging the effort. Their communication is subtle but clear, observed Zekrat. The mother conveys approval and encouragement through physical contact. The bears continued fishing for another hour. Autumn caught enough for both of them to eat. As the sun began to set, she led her cub to a sheltered area beneath a rocky overhang. There they would spend the night safely hidden from other predators. Tomorrow we should monitor the weather patterns, said Zekrat to his team. The human weather service has predicted heavy rain in this region. It will be interesting to see how the bears adapt. None of the alien researchers could have predicted how the coming storm would change everything for the bears, the human ranger, and their own mission on Earth. Dark clouds rolled over the mountains as the rain began to fall. What started as a gentle shower quickly turned into a powerful storm. Water poured from the sky in sheets, soaking the forest floor. In the alien observation post, alarms began to sound. Zekrat rushed to the monitoring station where Laroon was studying weather data. The rainfall is far exceeding predictions. Laroon said, concern evident in his voice. The ground in this region was already saturated from earlier rains this season. What does this mean for the ecosystem? Asked Zekrat. Increased risk of landslides, particularly in the steeper areas. Laroon pointed to a map showing the region where Autumn and her cub had last been seen. That area is especially vulnerable. Enreal joined them, bringing up footage from their drones. I've located the bears. They've taken shelter under a rock outcropping, but they're near the edge of a steep ravine. The aliens watched as the rain continued to pound the forest. Small streams quickly grew into rushing torrents. The water carved new paths down the mountainsides, carrying mud, rocks, and broken trees. The soil structure is failing on the north. Face, reported Laroon, pointing to readings on the screen. A landslide is imminent. As if responding to his words, the monitoring equipment showed a massive section of hillside beginning to move. Mud, rocks, and trees slid down the mountain in a destructive wave. The bears are directly in the path, Moralty exclaimed. On the screen, they could see Autumn suddenly alert, sensing the danger. She roared at her cub, urging it to move. The small bear scrambled to follow its mother as they fled from their shelter. The roar of the landslide grew louder as tons of earth and debris rushed down the mountainside. Autumn ran ahead, leading her cub away from danger. But the little bear wasn't fast enough. Its small legs couldn't match its mother's speed on the rough, slippery ground. A wall of mud and debris caught up with them. Autumn made it to higher ground, but turned back in time to see her cub get swept away by the edge of the landslide. The cub tumbled down, disappearing into a deep ravine that was rapidly filling with mud and water. The cub has been separated from its mother, Narration reported calmly, though the alien researchers all felt an unusual sensation that might be described as distress. The camera feed showed Autumn pacing frantically at the edge of the newly formed ravine. She could hear her cub crying from somewhere below but couldn't see it through the tangle of fallen trees and rocks. "The cub is alive," said Zekrat, looking at thermal imaging data. "It appears to be trapped on a ledge about 20 feet, down but physically unharmed." Autumn tried to climb down to reach her cub, but the sides of the ravine were too steep and unstable. Each time she attempted to descend, more earth crumbled away beneath her weight. Her distress was evident as she called out to her cub, who answered with frightened cries. "Can the cub climb out on its own?" asked Moralty. "Unlikely," replied Laroon. "The ravine walls are nearly vertical in that section, and the cub is too young to have developed sufficient climbing skills." "What about the mother?" asked Zekrat. "Can she find another way down?" Nreel studied the topography. "There is no safe access point within half a mile. By the time she could reach the cub, further landslides or flash flooding could occur. So, the cub will likely die without intervention," Zekrat stated. "That is correct," Laroon confirmed. "And our non-interference protocol is clear. We cannot directly interact with Earth's wildlife." The team fell silent, watching Autumn's continued attempts to reach her trapped offspring. The rain had lessened, but water still poured into the ravine from all sides. "Wait," said Nareel suddenly. "Our sensors have detected human movement nearby. It's the ranger, Jack Murphy. He's approximately 1 mile south and moving in this direction." Skrat's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Continue monitoring. This presents an unexpected opportunity to observe how these two species interact in a crisis situation." Jack Murphy made his way carefully through the wet forest. The rain had stopped, but water still dripped from leaves and branches. He had been checking for storm damage when his radio crackled with reports of a major landslide in his area. "This doesn't look good," Jack muttered to himself as he surveyed broken trees and washed-out trails. His years of experience told him the landscape had changed dramatically overnight. As Jack rounded a bend in the trail, he froze. Less than 50 yards ahead stood Autumn, the female grizzly he had observed for years. She was pacing back and forth, at the edge of what appeared to be a newly formed ravine. Jack immediately took cover behind a large tree. He knew better than to surprise a grizzly, especially one that seemed agitated. From his hiding spot, he studied the bear's behavior. Something was wrong. Autumn kept looking down into the ravine and making distressed sounds he had never heard from her before. "Where's your cub?" Jack whispered to himself, noticing the young bear was nowhere to be seen. Inside their cloaked observation post, the alien researchers watched with fascination. "The human has assessed the situation remarkably quickly," noted Skrat. "He seems to understand the mother bear's distress." "Will he retreat for his own safety?" asked Moralty. "That would be the logical response to a distressed apex predator." On their monitors, they watched as Jack slowly and carefully moved to a different position where he could see down into the ravine while staying hidden from Autumn. The cameras captured his expression changing as he spotted the trapped cub. Jack's heart raced as he considered his options. The cub was stranded on a narrow ledge about 20 feet down. Water was pooling at the bottom of the ravine and the level was slowly rising. Without help, the cub would either drown or die from exposure. But helping meant getting past Autumn, a protective mother who could easily kill him if she perceived him as a threat to her cub. "I need to call this in," Jack said quietly, reaching for his radio. He contacted the wildlife rescue team at park headquarters and described the situation. "We're stretched thin with emergency calls, Jack," came the reply. "Nearest team can't get to you for at least 4 hours." "The cub doesn't have 4 hours," Jack responded. "I'm going to have to try something." "Negative, Jack. Too dangerous." "Wait for backup." Jack clipped the radio back to his belt. He knew the rescue team was right about the danger, but also knew they were wrong about waiting. The water level in the ravine was rising too quickly. In the alien observation post, the researchers leaned forward in anticipation. "He appears to be preparing to intervene despite the danger," said Nareel. "This contradicts basic survival instincts." "Perhaps," Humans value the preservation of other species more than we understood, suggested Laroon. Jack took a deep breath and stepped out from his hiding place. He moved slowly into Autumn's line of sight, but kept a safe distance of about 30 yards. The bear immediately saw him and rose up on her hind legs, a clear warning posture. "Hey, Autumn," Jack said in a calm, even voice. "I know you're worried about your little one. I want to help." The bear dropped back to all fours and huffed loudly. She took a few steps toward Jack, who stood his ground but readied his bear spray, just in case. I know. You don't trust humans. Smart girl. But right now, your cub needs help that only I can give." To the alien's amazement, Jack began to slowly move sideways, maintaining his distance from Autumn, but gradually getting closer to the ravine edge. He kept talking in the same calm voice, never taking his eyes off the bear. Autumn watched him intently. She huffed and pawed the ground but didn't charge. When the cub cried out again, she looked down into the ravine, then back at Jack, as if making a connection between the human's presence and her cub's situation. "The bear appears to be processing complex information," said Zekrat in wonder. "She seems to understand that the human is offering assistance rather than posing a threat." "Impossible," said Moralty. "Bears lack the cognitive capacity for such assessment." Yet as they watched, Autumn took a step back from the ravine edge, still watching Jack carefully but seemingly allowing him access. "I've never seen anything like this," whispered Scrat. "We may need to reconsider our understanding of Earth species." Jack Murphy moved carefully to the edge of the ravine and looked down. The bear cub was huddled on a narrow ledge, wet and frightened. Water continued to rise below. Jack knew he had to act quickly. He set down his backpack and removed his climbing gear: a rope, carabiners, and a harness. Throughout his preparations, he kept talking to Autumn in a steady, calm voice. "I'm going to help your little one, girl. Just stay calm. I know this is scary for both of us." Autumn watched him intently from 20 yards away. She huffed and paced, but didn't approach any closer. When Jack unrolled the rope, she rose briefly on her hind legs, alarmed by the strange object. "It's okay," Jack said soothingly. "This will help me reach your cub." In the alien observation post, the researchers were recording everything. "His vocal patterns show elevated stress levels," noted Nareel. "Yet he maintains a consistent tone when addressing the bear. And the bear appears to be responding to this vocal pattern," added Zekrat. "Most remarkable." Jack secured one end of the rope to a sturdy tree and tested it with his weight. He put on his harness and connected it to the rope with carabiners. Every movement was slow and deliberate, giving Autumn time to see that he wasn't a threat. "The human is displaying remarkable awareness of the bear's psychological state," observed Laroon. "He's actively managing her perception of his actions." Jack approached the edge of the ravine. The drop was steep, and loose dirt crumbled under his boots. Autumn growled softly when he got too close to where her cub was trapped. I know, Jack said. "Your baby is down there. I'm going to get it." He began to lower himself over the edge. This was the most dangerous moment. If Autumn charged now, he would be completely vulnerable. Jack kept his eyes on the bear. As he started his descent, Autumn took 2 steps forward, then stopped. She made a low sound in her throat but didn't attack. The cub below heard Jack's movements and cried out. This seemed to help Autumn connect Jack's actions with helping her cub. "I'm coming, little one," Jack called down. "Just hold on." The descent was difficult. The walls of the ravine were slick with mud, and rocks came loose under Jack's feet. Halfway down, a large chunk of earth broke away, causing Jack to swing wildly on the rope. Autumn huffed loudly from above but still didn't charge. Finally, Jack reached the ledge where the cub was trapped. The small bear pressed itself against the wall, terrified of this strange creature suddenly appearing. "Hey there," Jack said softly, to the cub. "Your mom sent me to help." The alien researchers were fascinated. "He speaks to the cub as if it can understand his words," said Moralty. "Yet he must know it cannot. Perhaps the vocalization serves another purpose," suggested Zekrat. "The tone may communicate his intentions beyond the words themselves." Jack slowly removed his backpack and opened it. His plan was to get the cub into the pack and carry it. Up that way. But approaching the frightened young bear was dangerous. It might bite or scratch in fear. Using slow movements, Jack took out a small packet of beef jerky from his pocket. He broke off a tiny piece and held it out to the cub. The small bear sniffed cautiously, hunger temporarily overcoming fear. "That's it," Jack encouraged. "I'm a friend." After the cub took the jerky, Jack gently reached out and touched its wet fur. The cub flinched but didn't retreat. With patient, gentle movements, Jack continued to build trust with the frightened animal. Above them, Autumn watched the interaction with intense focus. She could see Jack and her cub but couldn't interpret exactly what was happening. Still, she didn't attack. Something in Jack's behavior was keeping her fear and aggression in check. "We are witnessing an extraordinary moment of interspecies trust," Sagrat said quietly. "This goes beyond anything we've observed on Earth so far." After several minutes of gentle interaction, Jack carefully lifted the cub and placed it in his backpack, leaving the top open so it could breathe easily. The cub squirmed at first, but then settled down. "Good job, little one," Jack said. "Now, for the hard part." With the cub secure in his pack, Jack prepared for the climb back up the ravine wall. He knew this would be the most difficult part of the rescue. The wall was unstable, he had added weight on his back, and a protective mother bear was waiting at the top. Jack began the difficult climb up the ravine wall. The bear cub squirmed in his backpack, making it hard to keep his balance. The rope held firm, but each step on the muddy wall was treacherous. "Steady now," Jack whispered, partly to the cub, and partly to himself. Halfway up, a section of the wall crumbled beneath his foot. Jack slipped and swung sideways, slamming against the ravine wall. The cub cried out in fear. From above, Autumn roared in response to her baby's distress. Jack's heart pounded. He knew that sound could quickly change from concern to attack. He had to move faster. "Almost there, little one," he said to the cub. "Your mom is waiting." In the alien observation post, the researchers watched with unusual intensity. "The human's heart rate has increased significantly," reported Nareel. "Stress hormones are flooding his system. The mother bear is also showing signs of increased agitation," added Laroon. "This is the moment of greatest danger." Scrat leaned forward. "If she attacks now, we may need to reconsider our non-interference protocol." His statement shocked the other researchers. Their most sacred rule was to never interfere with the natural development of a planet's species. "Surely you aren't suggesting—" "Intervention?" asked Moralty. Scrat didn't answer immediately. On the screen, they watched Jack struggle upward, now just 10 feet from the top. Autumn paced near the edge, making low, threatening sounds. "We have never encountered a situation quite like this," Sokrat finally said. "A member of the planet's dominant species risking his life to save the offspring of a natural predator. This interaction may be key to understanding Earth's unique ecological balance." Jack pulled himself up the final few feet. This was the most dangerous moment. He would be vulnerable as he climbed over the edge, with Autumn just yards away. The cub sensed its mother's presence and cried louder, increasing her agitation. "Here we go," Jack said, taking a deep breath. He hauled himself over the edge and quickly moved several feet away from the drop. Autumn stood her ground, swaying slightly. As she assessed the situation, Jack remained on his knees, making himself appear smaller and less threatening. He slowly removed his backpack and set it on the ground, opening it fully. "Here's your baby, Autumn," he said softly. "Safe and sound." The cub poked its head out of the backpack, saw its mother, and cried out. Autumn took a step forward, then hesitated. Jack carefully backed away from the backpack, giving the bears space. "The moment of truth," whispered Zakrat. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Autumn stared at Jack, then at her cub in the strange container. The cub tried to climb out but struggled with the backpack's sides. Jack wanted to help, but knew that approaching now could trigger Autumn's protective instincts. He remained still, speaking in that same calm voice. "It's okay, girl. The backpack won't hurt your cub. Go ahead." As if understanding, Autumn slowly approached the backpack. With surprising gentleness, she used her mouth to grip the cub by the scruff of its neck and lift it free. The cub immediately nuzzled against its mother, seeking comfort after the ordeal. Jack stayed motionless, giving the bears their moment. He expected Autumn to immediately retreat with her cub. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Autumn sat her cub down and looked directly at Jack. For several seconds, their eyes met. There was no aggression in her gaze, just a clear, steady look that seemed to hold meaning beyond simple animal awareness. In the observation post, the aliens were silent with amazement. "Are we seeing what I think we're seeing?" asked Nareel finally. "Yes," said Zekrat quietly. "Recognition, acknowledgement, perhaps even gratitude." After that long moment of eye contact, Autumn gently nudged her cub. Together, they turned and walked slowly into the forest. Not in a panic, not in fear, but with the measured pace of animals that felt no threat. Jack remained kneeling, watching them until they disappeared among the trees. Only then did he let out the breath he'd been holding. "You're welcome," he whispered. Zekrat turned to his fellow researchers. "I believe we have witnessed something unprecedented in our studies of evolving planets. A moment of true understanding between different intelligent species." "But what does it mean?" asked Moralty. "It means," said Zekrat, "that our report to the Council about Earth will need to be very different than we planned." 3 weeks after the rescue, the alien research ship orbited high above Earth. Inside the main chamber, Zekrat presented his final report to the Council of Elders. The 7 senior aliens sat in a semicircle, their silver skin reflecting the soft blue lights. "Honored Council," Zekrat began, "our research expedition to Earth has revealed something unexpected and profound." He activated a holographic display showing footage of Jack rescuing the bear cub and the moment of understanding between human and bear. "This event represents more than a simple rescue," Zekrat explained. "It demonstrates a capacity in humans that we have not seen on other worlds." Elder Drall, the oldest council member, leaned forward. "Compassion exists on many planets, researcher Zekrat. How is Earth different?" "The difference, honored Elder, is that this human showed compassion. Across species boundaries toward a natural predator, he risked his life not for personal gain or for another human, but for an animal that could have killed him." The council members watched the footage again, paying special attention to the moment when Autumn looked into Jack's eyes. "Even more remarkable," continued Zekrat, was the bear's response. "Our analysis shows that both creatures experienced similar neurological patterns during that moment of eye contact. They were, in a very real sense, communicating." Elder Triss, known for her skepticism, spoke next. "This could be a rare exception. One human and one bear do not represent their entire species." "We thought of that," replied Zekrat. "So we expanded our research. We found similar examples throughout human history. People risking themselves for animals, protecting ecosystems, forming bonds with creatures that should be their enemies." He showed more footage. People rescuing whales from fishing nets, rehabilitation centers for injured wildlife, conservation efforts in remote areas. What makes Earth unique is not just that humans can feel compassion for other species, but that this compassion sometimes overrides their survival instincts. They choose to help rather than harm, even at personal risk. The council chamber fell silent as the members considered this information. Finally, Elder Drall spoke again. "What does this mean for our plans for first contact?" Zekrat straightened, knowing his next words would be controversial. "I recommend we accelerate our timetable. Humans are not just another apex predator. They are potential caretakers. Despite their many flaws and destructive tendencies, they possess a capacity for interspecies understanding that may be unique in our galaxy." Back on Earth, Jack Murphy hiked through the same forest area, setting up a new wildlife camera. He had no idea that his actions weeks earlier were now being discussed by beings from another world. As he worked, Jack noticed fresh bear tracks in the soft earth. Following them casually with his eyes, he spotted Autumn and her cub about 50 yards away. The bears were feeding on berries, healthy and active after their ordeal. Jack smiled but didn't approach. He simply watched for a moment, appreciating their wild beauty from a respectful distance. Autumn raised her head, catching his scent on the breeze. She looked directly at Jack, showing no fear or aggression. The cub, noticing its mother's attention, looked toward Jack as well. After a moment, Autumn returned to feeding, but her relaxed posture suggested something had changed in her perception of humans, or at least this particular human. In the alien ship, the council reached their decision. "We will prepare for first contact," announced Elder Drawl, "but not as we originally planned. Instead of approaching humans as superior beings bringing knowledge, we will approach as equals seeking understanding." Scrot nodded in agreement. The incident with the bear revealed something important. Humans respond best not to displays of power or technology, but to demonstrations of compassion and mutual respect. "Then that is how we will approach them," said Elder Drawl. "Not with our most impressive technologies, but with our most meaningful gestures of peace." The council session ended, and Scrot returned to his quarters. He looked out at the blue planet below, thinking about Jack Murphy and Autumn the bear. Neither creature knew it, but their brief moment of understanding had just changed the course of two species' histories. On Earth, Jack finished installing the camera and began hiking back to his cabin. In the growing dusk, he thought he saw an unusual light in the sky, too bright for a star, too steady for an airplane. He watched it for a moment, then continued walking. Soon, very soon, he would learn the true significance of what had happened, that rainy day in the ravine. But for now, he was simply a man walking home through the wilderness, carrying the quiet satisfaction of having once bridged the ancient gap between human and bear.